Let's go back to our database diagram for a second and look at one of the relationships that we haven't talked about. And here's our employees table. And if we look, we have a relationship line here where the employees table is related to itself. There's a one-to-many relationship here. Let's see what it is. What is related in the employees table to the employees table? Go over here. I'll go ahead and click the ellipsis to make it easier to see. The foreign key is the manager ID. So if we look, here's the manager ID. It points to the employee ID in the employees table. So each employee has a manager, and that manager's ID points to the employee ID for that manager. Okay. So one way people like to visualize this is think of two employees tables, one on the left and one on the right. And the manager ID from the left table would point to the employee ID on the right table. But it's really not two tables. It's the same table. So let's go do a query that does a self-join. We're joining a table to itself. In one way of thinking of it, the employees table will be the actual employees. The other theoretical copy of the table will be the employees managers, because the employees managers, the managers are also stored in this table. So it helps to visualize it many times as two tables. So, and we're going to do that when we name them, because we're going to use aliases. And it will help us if we use the aliases. Let's do, I want to start with the from clause on this. From the employees table, and I am going to use a long alias. I'm going to call the employees table worker. So, and I am going to join it to the employees table. Remember, we're joining the employees table to the employees table, but on this copy, it's not really a copy, it's the same table, but I'm going to give it a different name. This one I called it worker. Over here, I'm going to call it manager. And I want to get out from this table. Let's do the select part now. And I want to get the worker's last name. I'm going to get the worker's last name. So I used the name of the table. Remember, I could have called that W and I could have called this one M. But I just want this to be real clear. I'm going to get the worker's last name, and I'm going to join that. And I'm going to pull out the manager and get their last name. Now, we know these are both coming from the employees table, right? We need a join condition. On what? Well, the workers table, each person has a manager ID. So I'm going to say worker.manager ID needs to be equal to the manager's employee ID. Remember, this is a foreign key. Manager ID is a foreign key that points to the primary key of the manager table. Right? So foreign key pointing to the manager ID, or pointing to the primary key in this manager table. Let's go ahead and execute it. And we can see that Kochar works for King, Dahan works for King. Hunold works for DeHaan. Ernst and Lawrence both work for Hunold. Margos reports to King. These guys all report to Margos. Now, if we want to, we can shorten this up a little bit. Call it W for worker and M for manager. Make it a little bit more readable, but I find sometimes that helps people understand a little bit better when we use the full words. So the worker's manager ID points to the manager's employee ID. Let's do, let's pretty it up some more too. Just to make it clear, let's concatenate some stuff in here. Plus the words works for. Now let's run it. Kochar works for King. DeHaan works for King. Hunold works for DeHaan. Now we have nice little sentences. Isn't that beautiful? I believe that's it. Let me see. Let me look at my examples here. If we want to separate this, we could also do it this way. Worker. I'm renaming these columns. Manager. And since I did that, break something. Oh, I was doing so good. Oh, I forgot my comma. See if that helps. There it is. Here's the workers and there's their managers. So a couple different ways we could make that one a little prettier. All right, so that's self-joins. Self-joins, a lot of times you need to take some time to think about it. It helps to visualize, even though it's the same table, visualize it as two tables with different names, and then use those different names as your aliases, and it will help you a lot.